Hi, my name is Jonathan Bhagan. I am the legal chairperson of the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes, as well as the treasurer of the Organization for Abused and Battered Individuals. The Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes is an initiative of the ZAndoli International Foundation and is a collective of Caribbean organizations representing countries throughout the CARICOM, that is the Caribbean Regional Organization, for those of you who don't know, and the OECS, which is the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. In this video, I will introduce you to the plans of the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes. Sex crimes is a sickness which has infiltrated the Caribbean region at every level of society. We all know someone who has been a victim of some form of sexual abuse, and even some of you watching here may be survivors of abuse. The sad reality is that most of the criminals who do these evil deeds never see the inside of a jail cell. There is little reliable data from the Caribbean, so I am forced to use US data. According to the US Department of Justice's National Crime Victimization Survey 2008 to 2012, only 2% of rapists will ever serve a day in prison. Furthermore, 68% of sexual assaults are not reported to the police. We can only assume that the reality in the Caribbean is much worse because our law enforcement agencies are far less advanced than the ones in the United States of America. Just imagine the fact that there are at least 98% of rapists in our countries walking around free, and you'll understand the need for some sort of change to take place to fight this issue. One major issue with crimes of this nature is that the majority of victims never report the crime out of shame or out of fear. Another major issue is that we have in the Caribbean, another major issue that we do have is that only Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica seem to have legislation dealing with sex offender registration. Even so, neither nation has a public sex offender registry. There also seems to be no regional policy to deal with sex offenders, registered sex offenders that is, moving from one country to another. Our proposal to solve these issues is for all the nations in the Caribbean to sign on to a treaty. A treaty, essentially, is an agreement in international law that is entered into by sovereign nation states and international organizations. Treaties, it's something like a contract. It's an agreement between international bodies, whereas a contract would be an agreement between private persons or corporations and such. The Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes, we already have a rough draft of our proposed treaty, and in theory, this draft could be extended to include not just the Caribbean, but Latin America and North America as well. Of course, this draft requires extensive consultation and further work, but it is sufficient at this moment to give you an idea of what we propose to do. So at present, we are calling this treaty the CARICOM Treaty for the Establishment of Sex Offender Registries. The purpose and scope of this treaty is as follows. And if you Google the work we've been doing, I have this treaty and a handbook that explains it in more depth on a blog. So the purpose and scope is as follows. 1. To establish a regional sex offenders registry and mandate that signatories establish local sex offender registries. 2. To create a system of notification to track whenever an offender moves from one jurisdiction to another, and to ensure that sex offenders registered in non-signatory states, that is, countries that do not haven't signed on to the treaty, who are outside of CARICOM, and these sex offenders are registered when they move into the Caribbean region. This treaty is the treaty will essentially work alongside the proposed U.S. international Megan's law, which President Obama signed on to, I believe, in January of this year, 2016. The U.S. international Megan's law to prevent demand for child sex trafficking, H.R. 4573. third proposal is to mandate that signatories, that is the standing countries, bring their laws and policies dealing with sex crimes in line with international law and international best practice. The fourth proposal is to mandate that signatories establish victim support units in their respective jurisdictions to provide practical assistance to victims of sex crimes. Our fifth proposal is to mandate that a system of rehabilitation and treatment and reintegration be established for former sex offenders to ensure that they integrate into society, and those that to basically give them a chance in a normal life, because we don't want them abandoned and going back to their old ways and raping more people or abusing more children. We want to fully rehabilitate them. And our sixth proposal is to ensure that convicted perpetrators of sex crimes are never employed in situations that facilitate their predilections. That is, you will not put a pedophile to work in a kindergarten, you won't put them to work in a school. But these things have been happening in the Caribbean, where registered U.S. sex offenders come to the Caribbean, especially in Trinidad. It happened at least once, where the girls in a girls' high school Googled their teacher and found out he was a registered sex offender, because there was no policy in place to screen these individuals properly. He made it through the cracks. So we need a policy to prevent these people from, getting through. And our seventh and last policy, 7 being the number of perfection, to introduce measures that increase the conviction rate of perpetrators of sex crimes to deter future offenders, and also, in accordance with international human rights law, protect sex offenders from unnecessary discrimination. That is, we do not want, once we have a public sex offenders registry, a bunch of crazy people running around killing past sex offenders. It's not your job to enact justice. When the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes had its first meeting on the 19th of March 2015, the only policy that was being discussed was a regional sex offenders registry and implementing a law similar to the Megan's law in the United States. However, upon research into the issues involved, we decided that if the goal is to truly reduce sex crimes, a much more diverse strategy was needed. A sex offenders registry in and of itself is useless if we can't catch the criminals. My experience working with the Organization for Abused and Battered Individuals has taught me the importance of victim support. Once we get proper victim support policies right, we can not only help the victims of these crimes recover, but also increase the conviction rate of sex offenders, as we'll be giving the victims the support they need to report the crimes and to be a competent witness at a trial. Proper victim support is therefore vital. It is essential in fighting against sex crime. If you or your organization wish to partner with us on this campaign, please help us by sharing this video and spreading the word. If you want more information about the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes, please check out ZAndoli.org. ZAndoli being the parent organization that started this entire campaign. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have been enlightened, inspired, and educated, and please do spread the word about our campaign.